Welcome everyone to this daily Sidereal Astrology forecast. This is for Thursday, March 23rd, 2017. So today a bit of a different energy. The moon's going to be shifting into Capricorn, perhaps giving us a bit of emotional reserve. Really good for responsibility. Anything that does require a bit of detachment and a long-term perspective, I think, can go well today. Could even be placing an emphasis on today about things having to do with that responsibility. The sun is, of course, still in Pisces, so still a very tranquil time, meditative time. In fact, very good for those spiritual activities. Yeah, the most important thing we've got today is Mercury squaring up to Pluto, which is a collectively challenging aspect. So we'll talk about how to work with this in detail, but today there might be a bit of a clash, maybe with our egos, maybe with holding on too tight to something. And it might have to do with information coming our way that doesn't sit well with us. That's a possibility. It may also be maybe a clash of communication. So very good to work on that if it is interpersonal, such as through your relationships. For some of us, maybe a clash with our routine, transportation, correspondence, things like this will be important to bring that extra attention to that, especially as we go into tomorrow, because this is part of a T-square, in which tomorrow Mercury will oppose up to Jupiter, which means we may not want to work on the details of things and get all the information figured out. We may just want to expand and see the possibilities. So it will be important to have balance with all of this as well. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this in more detail when we return. All right, so there is the moon in Capricorn, a day of responsibility perhaps, or maybe just a bit of emotional detachment. Capricorn is the sea goat, which is all about climbing mountains, and can be a great day for anything that does require patience, persistence, and responsibility, whether it's your work, relationships, home, family stuff, whatever the area of life might be with that. So along with that, the sun, Venus, and Mercury are all still in Pisces, of course, making this still a very tranquil or meditative time. Again, very good for spiritual activities. But along with that dreamy, watery energy, Mars is in Aries. So again, very good for getting things done. Personal drive, independence, and confidence can be very strong at the moment. So let's talk about this challenging aspect. Mercury squaring up to Pluto going into tomorrow. Part of this T-square going into tomorrow. So Mercury, the planet of our minds, of communication, of correspondence, of short distance travel. Basically everything that is about to and fro in our immediate environment. And that's also the mind, which is to and fro, the hemispheres communicating information. So things that have to do with this can be perhaps challenged here, collectively speaking. For some of us, it might be a bit of that communication barrier. Essentially what happens with Pluto is we hold on really tight because of fear, essentially. Pluto is showing us where the ego is holding on really tight in a very instinctual and primitive sort of foundational way, where there can be a very strong instinctual attachment. And so a great way of working with any square to Pluto is to challenge ourselves to detach as much as we possibly can. For the ego to detach as much as we possibly can, for maybe wanting things to be a certain way, or we're expecting things to be a certain way, or sometimes too with Pluto, is it can be this, this control, because again, there's the fear, so we're wanting to control it. So the more detached we are, the more willing we are to let go of the ego, to sort of surrender it, especially with Mercury and Pisces. That can help let this energy flow. So what ends up happening with Pluto is once we've completely detached and we're okay with whatever it is, we accept whatever it is, or whatever the outcome might be. Sometimes with Pluto, it's a projection. Sometimes it's just something about the future. So as we detach, we free ourselves up, and that's what Pluto helps us do. Pluto helps us strip away all of the attachments that we have from our physical incarnation, from as being human beings. Very natural, to have attachments. But that's Pluto. It's about death. It's about rebirth. So things having to do with, communication and all that, I think detachment is key. It can free us up. And then once we're in that free state, making the changes that we perhaps want to see. And I think the changes are very much about, again, surrendering, letting go, because Mercury is in Pisces. This has been emphasizing the fact that, all of this, even information and stuff and things we're thinking about and focused on, there's uncertainty. There's a lot of unknown about it. That's the whole point of what Pisces shows us, is how to surrender and let go of everything outside of our control. So that's the result of this, is a more detached mind, a more detached self, an ego, you could say, and, willing to go and see where life is taking us, because it's not always exactly where we think it's going or where we want it to go. So those are a few tidbits in terms of how to work with this constructively. And again, it can be very constructive with that detached perspective. And then once we're free, making the changes that we want to see, maybe with ourselves or our environment or something like that. Because as long as the fear is there and we're pushing it away, it persists, and we're not able to see exactly what those changes are. Life is trying to take us into a new direction, and so the more we're open to that, the more we can make the changes that are then in accordance with life. All right, so that's the square to Pluto. As we go into tomorrow, there's that opposition up to Jupiter. So although more so tomorrow, which I'll talk more about it, there might be a bit of this overexpansion. We may not want to work on the details. We may just want to see the possibilities and potentials. There could be over-optimism with this. So it is important to balance both the potential and the practical, to use the mind, and this also makes the day very good for research, deep diving, seeing the truth that may be uncomfortable, but, doing the work there. But yeah, with the opposition, a little bit of Mercury, which is the work, and then also a little bit of Jupiter, which is seeing the possibilities and potentials. There might be a bit of pendulum swing. We may not be optimistic. Some of us might be over-optimistic. Some of us might not be optimistic. But I think all of us, to a degree, are going to have a little bit of both with this. All right? But that's going to be more so tomorrow, so I'll talk about that today. Certainly the square up to Pluto, the ego clash, the ego dying, this transformation, letting go. It's not that powerful, but it is involving things having to do with Mercury. So the more we accept that, the more we work with Pluto, we embody Pluto, so to speak, it could certainly facilitate this process. So on a minor note, as we go into the weekend, we are going to be entering into the balsamic phase, which is the lowering energy phase. We're going to have a new moon early next week. So you may start to feel maybe a bit of lowering energy going into the weekend. That's good. It is the ending of the cycle, which is good for meditation, rest perhaps, and a bit of internal reflection in terms of what we've experienced these past 30 days. The moon is going to be sextiling Venus, so there could be some support with relationships or values, or maybe because Venus is retrograde, we're learning about our values and relationship type of stuff. And at that same time, Mercury squares up to Pluto. There is a square between the moon and Mars. And again, Mars is those personal needs. And although Mars is very well aspected, or very well placed rather, in Aries, he does have this square going on. So again, this is all about the ego. This is about our personal needs, maybe holding on a bit too tight. So the more detached we are with that, I think it can help the energy flow. All right, so that's the day in a nutshell. Certainly a day of constructiveness with the mind, with communication, with our routine, making whatever changes we feel like we want to make once we've stripped away all of the fears and attachments. But generally, as a theme of the day, the moon in Capricorn, very good for patience, responsibility, and seeing the long-term perspective of things. All right, so hope you guys have an awesome day. Thanks again for all of your support, and I'll see you all tomorrow.